Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner. I'm your host, Brian, and welcome to day 17 of my 31 horror movies in October Halloween series. Today, we'll be taking a look at a pretty transcendent film. It partially helped create a subgenre of horror, and that, of course, is from 1999, The Blair Witch Project, that I have on Blu-ray here. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. We'll start with the setup and the premise and the cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will be spoiler free as best it can be. So the Blair Witch Project's a 1999 American supernatural horror film written, directed, and edited by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez. It's a fictional story of three student filmmakers who hike into the Black Hills near Burkittsville, Maryland, in 1994 to film a documentary about a local legend known as the Blair Witch. The three disappear, but their equipment footage are discovered a year later. So in October 1994, film students set out to produce a documentary about the fabled Blair Witch. The students are Heather, Mike, and Josh. They travel to Burkittsville, Maryland, and interview residents about the legend. Locals tell them different stories and different things that they've heard about the legend, particularly one about a hermit who lived in the woods and kidnapped seven children in the 1940s, supposedly killing them in the basement, murdering them in pairs, while having one stand in the corner. The students explore the woods in North Burkittsville to research the legend. They meet two fishermen who warns them that the woods are haunted. They tell them about a young girl named Robin Weaver who went missing in 1988. When she returned 3 days later, she talked about an old woman whose feet never touched the ground. So once they start out in the woods, they camp for the night, and the next day they find an old cemetery with seven small cairns. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Cairns. Cairns. Those are like rock. I'm going to call them rock piles because that's what they are. One of which Josh accidentally knocks over. That night, they hear sounds of twigs snapping. The following day, they hike back to the car but cannot find their way before dark and make camp. The following day, they again hear twigs snapping. In the morning, they find three more rock piles have been built around their tent. Heather learns the map is missing. Mike reveals he kicked it into the creek in frustration, which provokes a fight between the three of them. They realize they are lost. They decide to head south using Mike's compass and discover stick figures suspended from trees. They again hear strange sounds that night, including children laughing. After an unknown after an unknown force shakes the tent, they hide in the woods until dawn. So that's a mouthful, but that's basically the gist and the premise. Obviously, they start out pretty lighthearted, interviewing people. It doesn't sound like they completely buy into the legend. But then they get in the middle of these woods here, and they think they know where they're going, and eventually, it just things get more dire and dire. They lose the map. The compass isn't taking them back to the car, and then they got all this weird shit happening in the meantime related to the Blair Witch. So that's the gist of it. The movie stars Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard, who obviously used their real names. They were unknown actors at the time. They were actors. We'll get into this whole thing with my review, but um, yeah, Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard. That's your cast of this movie. It's a different kind of horror movie. Obviously, this isn't a Hollywood movie. Um, like I said, at the time, people didn't know when you said found footage what the fuck you were talking about. To be honest with you, at least I didn't when I saw it. It was just a different kind of horror movie to me. Um, let's just go ahead and get into my review, though, starting with the pros, and there's quite a few. I really enjoy the Blair Witch Project. Even on rewatch, I realize I haven't watched it in a few years, and there's just something about it, for me at least, that it's just creepy beyond belief. And some of it's more from a personal nature, and some of it's just how they did it, how they made the movie very effectively. So you have to start with the fact that it is a groundbreaking movie that created another subgenre of horror, found footage. Now, it's not the it's not the first found footage film. I think Carnival of Souls was out before this, but it's definitely the most notable for the time that it came out. Nobody really talked about those other. I think there were two other quote unquote found footage films before this one. I can't remember the second one. Um, and that sort of documentary style film. that we, of course, now we get at least three or four every single year, it seems like, if not more. But so I mean, you have to give the devil its due. It was groundbreaking for the time. It also had a really smart marketing strategy to promote the movie that I don't think it would have been as effective and made as much money as it did. And this movie made a killing because it was only like I think it was only a couple $100,000 budget after post production, and it ended up grossing, of course, I don't like 250 million bucks worldwide or something. I think it's the biggest return on investment maybe in movie history. At least at that time it was. I know for sure. But they very smartly and effectively marketed the movie, even going so far as to giving out missing posters at the film festival that it first played at of these three actors, these three young camera filmmakers that we're introduced to in the movie that we follow. So yeah, it was very smart marketing to make a lot of people believe that this was actual found documentary footage, not a movie, not any there was no false narrative here, that this was the actual real life documentary footage, which of course, spoiler alert, I guess, if you haven't been around for the last 22 years, but it actually isn't. It isn't real footage. It is a movie, but it was done so smartly and so brilliantly, combined with that very smart marketing that they had, that it very effectively worked as a horror movie. It's also an effective horror movie because it actually never shows a killer or a villain in the movie. You never see the Blair Witch. It was more about what you don't see and the effectiveness of using sound, images, darkness, symbols, and setting to convince you that these guys are being haunted or stalked by some sort of supernatural creature or something, and it scares the hell out of you, even though you never actually see anything. So again, it's just you really got to give these producers and directors a lot of credit because they took something that was um, very shaky camera work, very simple, but they made it so effective to the point where I'm not sure anybody else could have at this time. Um, it has an effective runtime on that point. It's short and efficient. It has good pacing and editing so that the movie works well for what it is. You wouldn't want this movie to be 2.5 hours or even 2 hours, and it's not. It's I think it's actually under an hour and a half. It's like an hour and 23 minutes or something like that, which it needed to be. That's part of what makes the movie effective. They made it effective, as I mentioned, with the fact that they convinced many of the viewers, not all of them. There were some people that knew it was, you know, that knew that it was a movie and that wasn't real found footage at the beginning. But I would say 75% of people, at least initially, believed that this was absolutely real. Um, and I'm sure that's exactly what the producers and the directors were going for, obviously. So they did a good job in that regard. The actors used were unknowns and gave good, believable performances because they seemed like real performances. Again, it's part of why so many people believed that this was actual found footage because it's not polished. You know, some people I've heard some people say Heather Donahue was awful. In fact, I think she won a Razzie, but I think they only did that after they realized it was a movie. But when people watch this as a found footage documentary, I actually thought the three of them gave the kind of reactions that you would give. They weren't trying to act, which to me is what this movie needed. They didn't want, that's why they didn't use people like Josh Hartnett or I'm trying to think of who was young and hip at the time. Jennifer Love Hewitt, people like that that have been polished actors or actresses. They wanted to use unknowns so you didn't know. Again, it was just it's a very smartly made, very smart produced movie. So I actually thought they were really good because, well, they might not have been the best actors, and since I haven't really seen them in anything else, they're probably not. But for this movie, they were really good because we got their very like real life reactions and dialogue and things like that. Even though if you view it through a movie lens, a Hollywood movie, it's pretty cringe. But that's not how you're supposed to view it, and most people didn't when they first saw this movie. Um, let's see, the ending you got to talk about the ending of this movie. There's two things that creep me the hell out watching this movie. One, Personally, I think being in the middle of a woods at night is creepy to begin with, especially when you got noises going on and you can't really see anything because everything's dark. There's just, for me, that's like the scariest setting that you could have. At night in a woods, surrounded by nothing but trees and dry leaves and twigs and things that go bump in the night, basically. Because woods are going to make noise anyway. And then when you're in the situation that they were in, it's even more creepy and scary. So that's number one. But then you have to talk about the ending of this movie where they find the house and they're running through the house. They did a really good job with the production of the house because it's very, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just incredibly creepy looking. It's like a house that's been like the house from hell, basically, where some of it is just there's some destruction. It's very old. It's very grainy. There's symbols on the walls everywhere, and they're frantically searching for their friend. I mean, it's really intense. The last 10 or 15 minutes of this movie, I guess it's 10 minutes, just really intense, really creepy. And then, of course, the final shot that we get right before the ending credits. I'm not gonna spoil that for you, but it really leaves you looking over your shoulder quite a bit when you're watching this movie, especially in the dark by yourself. So yeah, they really did a good job with all the symbols and the way the house looked and everything. A certain character doing something that's seen on camera right before the end, and then how it actually ends. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my pros. I really enjoy this movie. It's a movie that I can watch and still get something out of, still be creeped out by, even after I've seen it 10 or 15 times. The first time I watched it wasn't at the theater in '99. I think I probably rented it in 2000, 2001, something like that. But I didn't really have access to the internet. For you young people out there, you have to realize there was an internet in 1999, but it wasn't the internet that we have today. You didn't have social media, really, other than for a few nerds out there, maybe. It wasn't to the degree that it is nowadays. Nowadays, this movie probably wouldn't fly as well as it did. In fact, I know it wouldn't, from the marketing to the successful box office and everything else, just because of all the social media and everything that's out there. So there'd be a lot of spoilers and things ruined about it. But at that time, well, we did have the internet. A lot of us didn't have the internet. We didn't have access to it. High speed internet. What the hell was that in 1999? It was the old dial up modem. That's what I had anyway, and through about 2005, I want to say. But my point is, what was my point? Um, well, I totally lost my train of thought going off on a tangent there. Isn't that interesting? Um, well, I really did lose my point. It's a really effective movie. I mean, I guess I was talking to young people because they'll watch this movie now and say, "Well, it's there's like 100 better found footage movies than this," but you have to have context at the time that it came out. You really do, which is going to be hard for people under the age of 20, 21 now. But very effective movie. I do have a few cons. Um, Getting on to that point, it doesn't hold up quite as well today when you watch it for a lot of people, especially if it's a first time watch. Partly because there are better found footage movies with more ideas and camera techniques and resources to make them at their disposal. Now, what I mean by better is they're more polished. They're more polished found footage movies. Now, in my opinion, this is the best found footage movie that I own and that I've watched. There's a couple others that I enjoy. Um, as Above, So Below, and of course Hell House LLC. Those are the other two. I have like three found footage movies that I really like, and those other two and this one, but this one's number one for me. And it's some of it might be nostalgia, but I also just think that it was so groundbreaking and it's so brilliant with the setting, and the ending that we get. But I'll admit it doesn't. It's not going to hold up quite as well today as it did in 1999, just because it was so new and different. Um, and the fact that you do find out that it wasn't real documentary footage, it does lose a little something when you realize it was a filmed movie made in that documentary style, but I still think it's effective. The other con I have, and this is more of why I'm not a big fan of the subgenre of found footage movies, and especially with this one, though, the shaky camera, of the handheld filming. The shaky camera viewing that we get due to the handheld cameras that they use, that found footage style that's really hit or miss with people. It's more miss for me. Like I said, I enjoyed about three of them. Certainly, this movie has really shaky camera footage, even worse than, or even more so, I should say, than the newer found footage movies. And it kind of makes the camera go all over the place. So I can see why some people got sick watching this, especially in the theater when it's on the big screen. I mean, even some people got sick watching it at home on their smaller screen. But those are really the only two cons I have. For me, I was about 18, 19 when this movie came out. It was very effective for me, very scary. The performances are good. The setting is really good. The fact they don't show anything and you're more scared by what you don't see. I actually like that kind of horror. I know a lot of people don't, and to each their own, but I think that makes this movie really effective. And I'm giving the Blair Witch Project a 9 out of 10. It's my rating is a 9 out of 10 for the Blair Witch Project from 1999. Go ahead and comment down below, guys, what you think of the Blair Witch Project from 1999. Do you like it? Don't you like it? What works for you? What doesn't? Like this video, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, especially the rest of my 31 horror movies in October Halloween series. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my horror content, including um, the certain anthology television series, a classic one I got coming up in November. So thank you for watching this video. Have a great day and stay scared. Bye.